Hi and welcome to Ryvis Rambles, where I talk about whatever the f I want. And today I want to talk about the differences between the drama The Untamed and its source, the novel 魔道祖师 or The Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation. Someone has probably already done this, but I don't care. I wanted to do it anyway. Just a fair warning, this video is super duper spoiler heavy. I'll go through the differences with the assumption that you already know the entire plot and characters. If you don't know the drama yet, I'd recommend watching my video summary where I talk about the general plot and characters, or just watch the drama itself, which you can watch for free on YouTube, by the way. Link to a playlist in the description below. This is basically the second part of my Untamed series, which I had to split into 5 more parts and a bonus, else this video would have been way too long. I also created 2 documents for this deep dive, where I compiled every single scene in the drama and the books. I went through painstaking efforts for this, or however painstaking something you enjoy can be, so I'll share them as well. It took me about 6 months to complete the lists. Of course, it's written in a way that's mostly comprehensible for me personally, and I'm not gonna rewrite it, but it might still be useful for someone else, so please feel free to use it. First, some general information. The novel is the source material, and the English version has been published in 5 volumes. The novel was originally published as a web novel with a total of 126 chapters, 13 of which were bonus chapters. These chapters have been combined to 23 chapters and 8 extras in the books. The drama has 50 episodes in essentially 1 season, with each episode being about 1 hour long. 50 hours of pure joy. I initially wanted to go through the plot volume by volume because the novel is the original story. But since I'm comparing an adaptation to its source, and the drama follows a more streamlined chronological structure, I decided it made more sense to go through the drama episode by episode and scene by scene. 3 small disclaimers before we dive into it. First, I don't understand Chinese. Shocker, I know. So there might be some differences in nuances of the language that I might have missed, or to put it more bluntly, some things might have been lost in translation. Sorry about that. Secondly, I already mentioned it in my Untamed drama review, but I'll be using the names that are easiest for me to pronounce, which sometimes might be the personal names instead of the courtesy names. And lastly, when comparing scenes, I might include snippets from the book to support my claims. I've marked the relevant passages, but the color of the markings has no meaning. Purple would have been on brand for me, but I already use it to highlight quotes for personal reference. So if I use the same color for the comparison, it would only confuse me. Before we get down to the nitty-gritty, I wanted to talk about some key differences between the drama and the novel. Since the drama is a visual medium, we naturally have more dialogues or general scenes between certain characters for exposition. Things that are revealed through thought in a novel, for example, are exposed in the drama through dialogue. For the same reason, a few things that are explained or shown at length in the books are condensed in the drama. For example, the whole lectures and punishments during Wei Ying's time in the cloud recesses. The novels, on the other hand, offer more overall lore, for example how the whole 1,000 swords and 100 holes curse works. Another difference is that some characters of the main cast are introduced way earlier in the drama than they are in the novel. For example, Xuyang, Wenqing, and Mengyao. Speaking of Xuyang, the drama contains a character that doesn't exist in the novel, and that's Xuyang's ancestor, Xue Chonghai. In the drama, he's the one that cultivated resentful energy for the first time, and thus is the original founder of demonic cultivation, who also created the so-called puppets, which are fierce corpses that can be controlled. In the novel, that's all Wei Ying, hence the book's title. One of the biggest changes in the drama is the past. In the novel, we continuously jump back and forth between the past and the present. We only witness fragmented tidbits of the past to slowly unfold why Wei Ying died, and so on. In the drama, however, the past is told in a continuous storyline. To connect the fragments from the novel, they added a bit more plot to the past itself, which is that the Wens are searching for the Yin Iron shards for ultimate control, while Lan Zhan and Wei Ying are on a quest to fight these shards to stop the Wen clan. It also draws more connections between Lan Zhan and Wei Ying, for example with Lan Yi and Baoshan Sanren being friends. A minor but significant change is that some statements that are said by random people in the books are given to established characters in the drama, like Mian Mian, for example. I might point out some of these differences on our journey ahead, but I probably won't include every single instance. It's just something I noticed while doing this comparison and wanted to have mentioned. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into it. The drama starts completely different from the novel. While there's only the rumor mill about Wu Ying's death in the novel, the drama shows the showdown at night at the city that leads up to Wu Ying's death and Lan Zhan's desperate attempt to save him. The beginning is accompanied by a voiceover that pretty much recites some of the rumors from the book. And there's already one of the first major differences between the book and the drama. While Wu Ying willingly sacrifices himself by jumping off the cliff, he is simply torn to shreds on burial mounds by fierce corpses in the novel due to spiritual rebound. So it's much less spectacular and much less heroic than it is in the drama, especially since the circumstances of his death are never clearly spoken about in the novel and are merely mentioned in passing. The fact that people believe that Zhang Chang is the one who killed him is the same in both versions though. The drama then cuts to 16 years later, where the Lan Juniors are listening to a storyteller who's telling the story of the Yiling patriarch. This doesn't happen in the books. In the book, it picks up right after Wu Ying's resurrection 13 years later instead of 16. This is pretty much similar in both, with the only difference that Mo Xianyu doesn't talk to Wu Ying before the latter wakes up in the novel. Immediately after waking up, he gets beaten up by Mo Xianyu's cousin and all that's the same. Then he leaves the hut, looks at himself and puts on the mask to conceal his identity. In the novel, Wu Ying doesn't look like Mo Xianyu, which they changed in the drama. In the book, he doesn't leave the hut right away. We first learn about Mo Xianyu's past and Wu Ying takes some time to get accustomed to his new body. Only when he overhears a conversation of the servants outside his hut talking about walking corpses and some cultivators that just arrived does he break out. He also doesn't put on a mask because his face is covered in powder and rouge. Then it continues with the Lan Juniors at the Mo estate who came to exorcise evil. Wu Ying crashes the party, etc. That's the same in both versions. After his encounter with the Lan Juniors, where he examined the spirit attraction flags, one of his earlier inventions, he takes a rest and amazingly manages to play flute notes on a leaf. That man is skilled. He's playing the song, the one Lan Zhan composed, and the juniors recognize it, which they shouldn't because Lan Zhan only ever played it once for Wu Ying in the Shouwu cave. This scene doesn't happen in the books. He just returns to his hut and meditates. A short while later, shit goes down, which is pretty much the same in both versions. Again, there are just a few minor differences. In the drama, it's a sword spirit. In the book, it's an arm spirit. I assume due to censorship. In the drama, the Mo family trio fights against each other. In the book, they fight against the arm spirit. In the drama, all but one cut heals on Wu Ying's arm. In the book, all cuts heal after the Mo clan has been annihilated. I guess the last one is a bit of a bigger change, cause that last cut has a great significance, but we'll get back to that later. While shit's going down, we have a brief Lan Zhan interlude which is missing in the books because the drama is a visual medium and just introduces him a tad earlier. He then appears at the Mo estate and saves the day. Seeing Lan Zhan has everything under control, Wu Ying bolts. That's the same in both versions. The episode ends with the storyteller from earlier getting paid by a mysterious person. Since he doesn't exist in the book, this obviously also doesn't happen. But we see Wu Ying in the background walking with a donkey. In the book he also steals a donkey before he runs off. In episode 2, Wu Ying walks around with his donkey, and while he takes a break at a well, our cultivators arrive and he gives them some space. In the drama, it's just out of courtesy. In the book, it's because his face is still caked in makeup and they're wary of him. The donkey receives an apple from a girl. In the drama, it's Ayan, the dancing girl. In the book, it's a different, seemingly random girl. Wu Ying does have a brief encounter with her again much later in one of the extra chapters at Gusula. Then we learn about Ayan's family and their past, and Wu Ying hears about Dafa Mountain. On his way to Dafa Mountain, he runs into trapped cultivators, where he shortly after also meets Jiling for the first time. Jiling recognizes Mo Xianyu, and Zhang Cheng has his first entrance. Then Lan Zhan appears with the Lan Juniors, they defuse the situation, and Lan Zhan acknowledges Mo Xianyu's presence. All of this happens in the book. Next, Wu Ying sits by a river reminiscing about the past. In the book, this happens as he descends the mountain again before he stops by a creek to finally wash the makeup off his face. While Wu Ying's taking a nap, the Lan Juniors meet an old guy sweeping a tomb. This doesn't happen in the book. The Lapel then wakes Wu Ying up from his nap because he's hungry, and Wu Ying finds soul-gathering grass, which means there's cultivator's bird nearby. In the book, he just finds a qiankun pouch with all kinds of useful spiritual trinkets. In the drama, he then passes the same tomb, seeing a ghost of Qing. In the book, he runs into the dead soul of a random guy. Worried about the juniors, he rushes back up Dafa Mountain, heading to the shrine of the Heavenly Maiden. The juniors are already in the shrine and accidentally awaken the Heavenly Maiden. Wu Ying comes to the rescue and they run away. Outside, Wu Ying lectures the juniors. All of this is the same in the books, with the exception that Wu Ying lectures the juniors on the run. Then there's a cut to Lan Zhan and Jiang Cheng waiting in Fujiao City for the juniors. This also happens in the book. After having saved the kids, Wu Ying helps them figure out what exactly the Heavenly Maiden is. This happens while they're still on the run in the books. In the drama, the Heavenly Maiden followed them and Jinling attacks her. In the book, they kinda accidentally run into her, finding her eating someone behind a bush before Jinling attacks her. Wu Ying builds a makeshift flute out of bamboo and accidentally summons Wen Ying, who destroys the Heavenly Maiden, which apparently was just an illusion. In the book, she's not an illusion and loses a white pearl. The cultivators then shift their attention to Wen Ying while Wen Ying tries to do damage control. He plays a song in the hopes of regaining control of Wen Ying and bumps into Lan Zhan, who latches onto him. Wen Ying is surprised but still manages to send Wen Ying away. Then Jiang Cheng arrives, and when he hears that Wen Ying has been summoned, he whips Mo Xinyu, believing it's actually Wen Ying. Lan Zhan protects him from the first strike, but when Wen Ying tries to flee, Jiang Cheng still manages to hit him. However, since Mo Xinyu sacrificed his body, nothing happens. After this point, it's exactly the same in the books. Then Wu Ying faints and it cuts to the past at Lotus Pier 16 years ago, which is a logical error that I talked about in detail in my recap video of the Untamed. This is where the second episode ends. In the book, however, he doesn't faint. Instead, we get some further exposition about Mo Xinyu. Mo Xinyu is a so-called cut leaf, which is a Chinese euphemism for a gay guy specifically, due to a legend of an emperor cutting his sleeve because the guy he loves fell asleep on it and he didn't want to wake him. Wu Ying hides behind Lan Zhan, fully committing to being a cut sleeve. He tries to get rid of everyone in one fell swoop, however his plan backfires and Lan Zhan takes him to the cloud recesses. Lan Zhan does take him to the cloud recess in the drama as well, but all of that happens off screen. In the book, Wu Ying isn't happy about being back at Gusu and tries to be as annoying as possible, but it doesn't work. Lan Zhan won't let him go. At night, Wu Ying even climbs into Lan Zhan's bed. He wants to scare him off by teasing him, but it once again backfires and he has to sleep on top of Lan Zhan. While Wu Ying considers his life choices, we finally cut back to the past. Unlike the drama, it doesn't start at Lotus Pier though, but right in Gusu, or at Gusu. As for how far back into the past, there is no specific number of years mentioned in the book, just that Wu Ying was 15 years old. The drama then continues in a guest house inside the town. The Zhang siblings and Wu Ying just booked a room but have to leave because of the jinns. Wu Ying flirts with Mian Mian, hoping she could help them stay. However, this doesn't help and they're kicked out anyway. Outside the guest house, Wu Ying and Jiang Cheng discuss how arrogant Jin Zishan is and his engagement to their sister, Zhang Yanli, who by the way doesn't join the boys at the cloud recesses in the books. At the entrance of the cloud recesses, they notice they forgot their invitation. Without invitation, they can't enter. This is where Wu Ying and Lan Zhan have the meet cute. Wu Ying begs Lan Zhan to let them in, but Lan Zhan is relentless, so Wu Ying goes back to retrieve the invite. The other Zhang disciples wait around a campfire for his return, where Jiang Cheng confirms that Wu Ying is bi. In the book, Wu Ying explicitly states that he's not into guys, but this happens later, so we'll get back to this. When Wu Ying returns at the entrance, the Zhangs are gone, because Lan Zhan let them in after all. In fact, no one's there anymore, so Wu Ying breaks the ward to enter the cloud recesses. First of all, none of this happens in the book. There are two things worth mentioning though. In the book, Mian Mian is part of a random sect, not the Jin clan. And second of all, the whole Wu Ying flirting with Mian Mian happens much later, during the Wen indoctrination while she's handing out perfume sachets. In the drama, Wu Ying then scales a wall where he runs into Lan Zhan again and they fight over wine and some other broken rules. This is not entirely the same in the book. In the book, Wu Ying doesn't have a legit reason to break the curfew. He just breaks the rules for the fun of it, and he does it more than once. In this case, he snuck out to get some wine, and while sneaking back in, he runs into Lan Zhan. They fight and one jug of wine breaks. We don't witness the actual fight, we just have Wu Ying narrating this to his friends. In the drama, Lan Zhan brings Wu Ying to Lan Xichen and Lan Xuren for punishment. Lan Xichen tells Lan Zhan to punish Wu Ying as he sees fit, and Wu Ying immediately receives the punishment of copying the Lan clan precepts. And Wu Ying immediately receives the punishment of copying the Lan clan precepts. Wu Ying notices a corpse in the room, which Lan Qiren and Lan Xichen have been examining. Before Wu Ying can show off his smarts, we have a brief interlude with Wen Ruhan sending Wen Qing off to the cloud recesses to find one of the 4 yin iron shards. After Wu Ying gave his input, Lan Zhan and Lan Xichen are walking outside by themselves discussing Wu Ying. Lan Xichen already seems to notice that Lan Zhan likes this boy. He's our number 1 Wang Xian shipper. We also learn that the Lan dad is already dead. Okay, so this whole thing is quite different from the books. First of all, Wu Ying's punished more than once, and each time by Lan Qiren, not Lan Zhan. Wu Ying doesn't receive his first punishment after sneaking in wine, but after the first lesson. He also doesn't serve the punishment himself, but lets Ni Huisang do it. In turn, he helps him pass a test. Secondly, the whole corpse thing and Wu Ying showing off his big brain doesn't happen in the book, because at this point, there are no controlled corpses yet. Thirdly, Lan Xichen doesn't make his first entrance in the past, but in the present, when Lan Zhan drags Wu Ying to the cloud recesses after Dafan Mountain. At this point, Lan Xichen is just about to leave for Lan Ling to visit Meng Yao. Fourthly, I didn't know this word existed. I guess I've never counted to 4 before. But fourthly, Lan Zhan's and Lan Xichen's dad is still alive, but in seclusion. He dies later when the winds burn down the cloud recesses. And fifthly, Wen Qing isn't sent to the cloud recesses. She appears in the book much later for the first time. The third episode ends in Nightless City with fierce corpses, or puppets as they're called in the drama, dancing around a yin iron shard and Xu Yang making his first appearance. This also doesn't happen in the book. Wen Ruhan never controlled fierce corpses, and just like Wen Qing, Xu Yang appears much later in the plot. He also never worked for Wen Ruhan. However, Xu Yang mentions a trial in the drama, which I suppose is the experiment Xu Yang does by himself in one of the bonus chapters in the books. But we'll get back to that in a later video. Episode 4 begins with the official salute ceremony at Gusu, where each clan presents the Lan clan with a gift. We see Ni Huisang for the first time, who's bold enough to carry a bird with him, and Meng Yao is introduced. Sparks are flying between him and Lan Xichen. In the book, Meng Yao is introduced quite early, but his first actual appearance is in chapter 10 of volume 2. Sadly, we're also already introduced to Wen Chao. In the book, he first appears in chapter 11 of volume 3. In the drama, the winds crash the ceremony, but Lan Xichen quickly diffuses the situation. None of this happens in the book. In fact, we never learn how Lan Xichen and Meng Yao actually met in the books. After the ceremony, Wu Ying walks around with his boys and boasts about his fight with Lan Zhan. They run into Lan Zhan, who ignores Wu Ying. Meanwhile, Lan Xichen and Lan Qiren discuss the Wen clan, which is one of the exposition incidents I mentioned earlier in the video. Meng Yao then says bye to Lan Xichen, and Wen Qing acts all sussy in the back of the mountain. While Wu Ying and Ni Huisang are catching fish, Wu Ying spies Wen Qing and tries to charm some info out of her, but she's not buying it. Wu Ying then returns to the Zhang siblings with the fish he's caught. Again, none of this happens in the book. The only exception being Lan Zhan ignoring Wu Ying when the latter tries to say hi. They also never mention catching fish, instead they talk about hunting pheasants. Then we finally have the first day of lectures. Wu Ying is super bored and Lan Qiren tries to call him out, but Wu Ying is super smart, which is precisely why he's so bored. He can answer every question easily and makes a suggestion of using resentful energy to exercise evil. Lan Qiren hates him for that and kicks him out. This is exactly what happens in the book. Since he was kicked out, Wu Ying strolls around in the back of the mountain and catches Wen Ying shooting arrows. Wen Ying is already good, but Wu Ying still gives him a few pointers. Wu Ying also sees Wen Qing again and wonders if there's a secret in the back of the mountain. Just as he ponders this, a white Lan Zhan appears. And this is where the episode ends. That's not what happens in the books. Wu Ying does stroll around the cloud recesses, but nothing significant happens. After the lesson, the boys discuss the lecture, they tell Wu Ying about his punishment, which he doesn't do, and we learn some lore about the Golden Core. The whole interaction between Wu Ying and Wen Ying happens in the book during an archery contest at the Grand Symposium in Qishan. So the whole thing with Wu Ying giving Wen Ying tips, etc. happens, but chronologically speaking, it happens after Wu Ying stays at the cloud recesses. That symposium is never mentioned in the drama. Either way, that's how Wu Ying meets Wen Ying for the first time. During the symposium, a few other things happen, but they'll be mentioned later. Lan Zhan drags Wu Ying to his punishment in the library pavilion under his supervision. Wu Ying is once again bored out of his mind and starts to tease Lan Zhan in various ways. There's a brief interlude of the Wen siblings in their room, and then it continues with Wu Ying's teasing. He draws a painting of Lan Zhan and tricks Lan Zhan into looking at porn. Okay. He draws a painting of Lan Zhan and tricks Lan Zhan into looking at gay porn. This makes Lan Zhan so mad that he loses his composure and kicks Wu Ying out. Wu Ying then hangs out with his boys again and boasts around once more. Most of this happens in the book, but there are significant differences. First, Wu Ying isn't dragged into the library pavilion by Lan Zhan. He is bored though and does tease Lan Zhan a lot. All of this is a bit condensed in the drama. In the book, the punishment lasts for several days, and he's only supervised by Lan Zhan because he didn't do his first punishment himself. Painting and porn both happen in the book, however, in the book it's explicitly mentioned in a bonus chapter that it wasn't gay porn. While Wu Ying is boasting to his friends in the drama, they spot a so-called dire owl. Meanwhile, the Lan brothers discuss suspicious activities in the back of the mountain. As they do, they run into Su She. Shortly after, Wu Ying and Jiang Cheng pick up Zhang Yanli from Wen Qing's room, who took care of her because she fainted. None of this happens in the book. It then continues with the whole waterborne abyss incident called Aqua Demons in the drama. Wu Ying and Jiang Cheng hear about this, so they want to help, as do the Wen siblings. They head to Tei Town, where Wu Ying and Lan Zhan share a room at a guest house. At night, another fish is eaten by the lake. The next day, they walk to the lake and Lan Zhan once again spills Wu Ying's wine. Up to this point, it's quite different from the book. First of all, there are no Wens at the cloud recesses, so they obviously don't join on the mission. Also, the boys only have time to join Lan Chen because Lan Qiren is in Qinghe, which means there are no classes and they have some free time. And lastly, this is where Wu Ying, or at least we, the readers, meet Lan Chen for the first time in the past. Shit goes down on the lake, Wu Ying explains the name of his sword to Lan Zhan, who judges him for it, and they rescue Wen Ying and Su She. This is pretty much the same in the book, with the itty bitty tiny difference that Wen Ying isn't there, so he also isn't rescued. In fact, it's the first time the Wen clan is properly introduced in the book. After surviving the ordeal in the drama, Wu Ying is concerned about Wen Ying and visits him in his room at a guest house. In the meantime, Jiang Cheng buys a kum for Wen Ying. Jiang Cheng buys a kum for Wen Qing, and then it's time to head back to the cloud recesses. They're traveling by boat. Wu Ying offers Lan Zhan and Jiang Cheng loquats, which the first rejects and the latter accepts. Most of this doesn't happen in the book. Only the loquat scene exists. They're also on boats, and Wu Ying flirts around much to Lan Zhan's annoyance or dismay. Episode 6 starts with a party night of the boys, though it goes way more overboard in the drama than it does in the books. In the book, they drink wine, gamble, and so on. There's no weird orgy happening. The major difference is that Lan Zhan crashes the party the next morning. In the drama, he crashes the party the same night. The other boys scram and Wu Ying forces him to drink alcohol, which not cool. Lan Zhan loses a bit of his composure. They have a heartfelt conversation about their dead parents, and Wu Ying learns that the Lan's forehead ribbons may only be touched by family and significant others. Wu Ying then tucks him into bed and makes Lan Zhan call him Gege. This doesn't happen in the books. At least not like that. Wu Ying does petrify Lan Zhan with a talisman in the books, but it happens way later in a bonus chapter in a dream. He also never forces Lan Zhan to drink. Lan Zhan's first time being drunk happens in the present with his consent, not in the past.
Okay, maybe he did actually get drunk in the past after Wu Ying's death by himself. Somehow I glossed over it because it was without Wu Ying. Nevertheless, he wasn't forced to do it in the books either way.
And Wu Ying learning about the importance of the Lan clan's forehead ribbon also happens in the present, after it's been used in every which way, even in the past. Wu Ying's memory of his parents isn't mentioned until much later, when Wu Ying is sitting on Little Apple with Lan Zhan holding the reins, which triggers this memory. In the books, Wu Ying tucks Lan Zhan into bed after being drunk. However, it's not during his first time being drunk, but the second, when they also share their first innocent kiss. The whole Gege situation happens much later in a different context. They're on a night hunt, role-playing. Lan Zhan wants to kiss, but Wu Ying wants Lan Zhan to call him Gege first. In the end, neither happens because they're interrupted. And lastly, since Lan Zhan crashes their party the next morning, the boys are too delirious to run away. While all of this happens, Lan Chen and Lan Qiren are talking about the Biling Lake situation. This scene doesn't exist in the books and once again only serves exposition purposes. They also discuss Wu Ying, which also doesn't happen in the book, at least not on page. In both versions, Lan Zhan drags Wu Ying away to collect punishment together with him, but for different reasons. In the drama, it's because they both had wine. In the books, we once again only hear about this from Wu Ying's narrations, but apparently after being caught breaking the rules again, Wu Ying pushed Lan Zhan out of the boundaries, which technically means he broke the curfew as well. And even though it was Wu Ying who pushed Lan Zhan out of boundaries, Lan Zhan observes the rules without fault. Be it on purpose or not, if a rule is broken, it needs to be punished. After the punishment, Wu Ying is being a whiny bitch and Jiang Cheng has to carry him on his back. They run into Lan Chen, who points Wu Ying to the cold springs because it heals wounds faster. At the spring, Wu Ying runs into Lan Zhan. Coincidence? I don't think so. Lan Chen is our #1 Wang Xin shipper, once again confirmed. This is the same in both versions. In the meantime, when Qing sends a message to Wen Ruhan, this doesn't happen in the books, who cares? Wu Ying then bothers Lan Zhan in the cold spring, which is the same in the book with the minor exception that they're naked. It doesn't really matter here, but I still wanted to mention it. While Wu Ying is being chased away by Lan Zhan because he teased him too much and gets a good scolding by Lan Qiren in the books, the two boys are sucked into an underground cave in the drama. In that cave, they're attacked by a Guqin and Lan Zhan has to tie his forehead ribbon around their wrists to protect Wei Ying. Congrats, they're married now. Aside from the real marriage, the only scene that could be considered similar in the books is when Lan Zhan ties his forward ribbon around Wei Ying's wrists when he's drunk for the second time. It's the same night of their first kiss. Anyways, while they're trapped in the ice cave, the others are frantically searching for them, and there's some straight shit happening here. Sorry, but the two have zero chemistry, so it really is shit. Seriously, what is this? I suppose it's meant to introduce some romantic tension between those two, but it just makes me cringe. To be fair, their chemistry is even worse in the books. In the ice cave, Lan Zhan and Wei Ying find a bunch of white rabbits and meet the spirit of Lan Yi, a former sect leader of the Lang clan. She spills some lore about the Yin Iron and Xue Chonghai, Xu Yang's ancestor who doesn't exist in the books and is the original founder of demonic cultivation in the drama. Also turns out that Lan Yi was friends with Bo Shansanan. While Lan Yi exists in the books, she's mentioned only once. Instead, after Wei Ying was chased away by Lan Zhan, the kids learn some lore about Lan An, the founder of the Lang clan. End of the episode. Lan Yi continues to explain the lore to Lan Zhan and Wei Ying before she finally disappears. After her disappearance, Wen Qing and Wen Ying's Yin Iron senses are tingling or something. Whatever it is, they feel something. Lan Yi left a Yin Iron shard behind, which Lan Zhan picks up. Shortly after, they re-emerge from the cave and Jiang Cheng and Wen Qing, who just run into each other, find them. Lan Zhan and Wei Ying then bring the Yin Iron shard to Lan Xichen and Lan Qiren and tell them everything they learned. Wei Ying promises to keep it a secret, and as they're And when Yu Huisang asks what happens when they're walking through a hall, Wei Ying just tells him bullshit, to prove to Lan Zhan that he can trust him. Jiang Cheng sees Wei Ying getting all chummy with Lan Zhan and is jealous from a distance. Wen Rohan sends Xu Yang off to Yu Yang to retrieve a Yin Iron shard with Wen Chao on his tail to have an eye on him. I love Xu Yang, but who cares about the rest? Anyways, none of this happens in the books. Then we have the infamous and super cute lantern scene, which unfortunately also doesn't exist in the book. It's one of my favorite scenes in the drama because it establishes the romantic chemistry between Wei Ying and Lan Zhan so much better without even being an official romance. After the lantern scene, we have the escalation between Jin Zishen and Wei Ying, because Jin Zishen keeps disrespecting Zhang Yanli, so I'm completely on Wei Ying's side here. The escalation happens in the books, but it happens right after the Lan An lore. After hearing about Lan An's life, the boys are talking about romance and ask Jin Zishen about his engagement, but he doesn't want to talk about it, which triggers Wei Ying and they have a fight. They both have to leave for punishment. Wei Ying is playing with ants, Lan Zhan thinks he's crying and wants to comfort him, only to be disappointed once again. That's all the same in the book. The sect leaders discuss the boys' behavior, but also the engagement between Zhang Yanli and Jin Zishen, and agree that it's better to call it off because there's no point in forcing them. This also happens in the book. But during this conversation in the drama, Zhang Fengmian tells Lan Qiren that Wei Ying has always been like this. In the book, Zhang Fengmian conveys this message to Lan Qiren in a letter, which Lan Qiren received way before the escalation. Next, the sect leaders discuss the Yin Iron shards. This doesn't happen in the book. After hearing that the engagement has been cancelled, Wei Ying runs to Zhang Yanli to apologize. This also doesn't happen in the book, at least not on page, because as I mentioned before, Zhang Yanli didn't come to the cloud recesses with them. Then, the sect leaders discuss the Yu Yang massacre, because Xu Yang has already killed the Chang clan in the drama. The discussion doesn't happen in the books, because the massacre happens much later after Wei Ying's death. And lastly, the Zhangs get ready to leave while Lan Zhan is sent on a mission to retrieve the other Yin Iron shards. The episode ends with Wei Ying sitting in a bamboo forest with the bunnies they found in the ice cave. First of all, in the book it seems like it's only Wei Ying who has to leave while Jiang Cheng stays at the cloud recesses. And secondly, the ice cave doesn't exist in the books, but the bunnies do. Wei Ying was the one who found them and gave them to Lan Zhan after jokingly threatening to eat them, even though I'm not so sure about that being a joke. And that's how Lan Zhan's armada of bunnies came to be. Before Wei Ying leaves, he's looking for Wen Ying, but Wen Ying is already gone. Wei Ying then is back in the bamboo forest, wondering where Lan Zhan is going before he's joined by the Zhang siblings. This doesn't happen in the book, and he's much nicer to the bunnies in the drama than he is in the books. Before Lan Zhan goes on his mission, he says bye to the bunnies, which just is the cutest thing ever. Meanwhile, Wen Chao bothers and threatens Lan Xichen because he wants the Lan Xin Iron Shard, but Lan Xichen just tells him to leave. Boss move. When the Zhangs want to depart for real, they notice that Wei Ying has disappeared. Jiang Cheng wants to search him, but Zhang Fengmian tells him to let it be. Wei Ying has gone off to follow Lan Zhan. He already figured that he went to search for the Yin Iron shards and wants to join him. Lan Zhan isn't amused, but he's also not complaining. Wei Ying then shows off a new skill, or talisman, he's created called bonding. They're also followed by the Wens and their weird owl. Lan Zhan follows the lead of the Yin Iron shard in his possession, which brings them to Tanzhou, a small town in Qinghe where they also run into Nie Huisang. Back at Lotus Pier, Jiang Cheng sets out to find Wei Ying. In Tanzhou, there's a magnificent flower shower and they hear about the tale of the florist lady. Oof, that's hot. In Hangzhou, there's a magnificent flower shower, and they hear about the tale of the florist lady, called the Damsel of Annual Blossom in the books. While it's only mentioned on the side in the drama, we learn a bit more about her in the books. The legend is the same in general, but in the book, Wei Ying is part of the legend, because no one's ever seen her except for him, and only because he bothered her to death. Not actual death, but bad enough. We also don't learn this in the past in Chenghe, because none of the Yin Iron Shard mission is happening in the books. We learn about this when the juniors talk about it in the present, when they're on their way to the Tan prefecture to join Lan Xichen. At this point, Lan Zhan and Wei Ying have already gathered all of Niu Mingjue's body parts except for the head. In the drama, Lan Zhan and Wei Ying continue their journey with Niu Huisang, which Wei Ying doesn't appreciate because he wants to be alone with Lan Zhan. Spend some quality time, you know? But Niu Huisang can't read a room and simply doesn't care after Wei Ying straight up tells him, so he follows them anyway. In the meantime, when Qiao found a Yin Iron Shard, the weird Wen Owl is still following the boys, and Wen Qiao threatens Wen Qing. And lastly, Wen Qiao unseals the Heavenly Maiden. On his search, Jiang Cheng runs into Wen Qing, who warns him that the boys are in danger. Wei Ying, Lan Zhan, and Niu Huisang arrive in or at the shrine of the Heavenly Maiden on Dafan Mountain. Shortly after, the Heavenly Maiden comes to life and attacks them, but they manage to reseal her. However, the exit is now blocked by puppets. This is where the episode ends. None of this happens in the books. On to the next one. Their only way out is to run through the puppets, but Niu Huisang is super scared. Luckily for him, before they can actually start their dash, they're rescued by Wen Qing. Just as the boys are about to leave the shrine, they're finally found by Jiang Cheng. Wen Qing fights off that weird owl, the boys join her, and they discuss how to restore the puppets' consciousness, because they're not dead yet. Wei Ying then puts Wen Qing, Jiang Cheng, and Niu Huisang in a cage or net to protect them from the puppets, while he and Lan Zhan defeat the weird owl for good. There's a brief Wen Qiao interlude, but who cares? When Wei Ying and Lan Zhan return, the puppets have returned to normal, but the other three, Wen Qing, Jiang Cheng, and Niu Huisang, are missing. Not only does none of this happen in the books, I also think there are no living puppets until Xu Yang starts his experiments. Again, the closest thing to the whole Wen Ruohan in a hall with his puppets thing is Xu Yang with his experiments, watching them fight and all. As mentioned before, this is a bonus chapter in the books. Wei Ying and Lan Zhan find the other three at Wen Qing's family's ancestral grave on Mount Dafan, which is the tomb the juniors passed in the second episode. Wen Qing tells them about their past with the Heavenly Maiden, and that Wen Ying's soul was partially sucked in by her, which is why he's so sensitive to dark energy now. Wen Qiao reports back to Wen Ruohan, while the idiot trio, being Wei Ying, Jiang Cheng, and Niu Huisang, returns to being an idiot trio. They start catching chicken, which is actually just a distraction, so Wei Ying and Lan Zhan can ask Wen Qing about the one's intentions in following them. As Wen Qing wants to leave, Jiang Cheng follows her, concerned about her safety. Honestly, they have much better chemistry than Zhang Heli and Jin Zishen. Again, none of this happens in the books. The boys then travel to Yueyang and sit in a tavern to get intel. They hear rumors about the Zhang clan, and Lan Zhan's Yin Iron Shard suddenly starts to act up, so they decide to visit the Zhang clan's residence. This is where the episode ends, and the last bit happens partially in the books, but not in the past and without the Yin Iron. It's also just Wei Ying and Lan Zhan without company while they're searching for Niu Mingjue's body parts. They do get intel at a tavern, where they hear about the Zhang clan massacre for the first time. They visit the residence in the book as well, but everything that follows is a bit different. More on this in the next episode. So the boys, minus Niu Huisang because he's scared, visit the Chang residence and run into Xu Yang. Xiao Xingchen and Solang also arrive to capture Xu Yang. Together, they manage to subdue him and truss him up real good. Wei Ying pats him down to search for the Yin Iron Shard, but Xu Yang doesn't carry it on him. They regroup and discuss their findings. No Yin Iron to be found. When Niu Huisang appears with Ming Yao and Tao, they decide it's best to bring Xu Yang to Niu Mingjue for proper punishment. None of this happens in the book. Instead, it's just Wei Ying and Lan Zhan in the present, visiting the Chang residence and graveyard. At the graveyard, they see a gravedigger and want to stop him. The gravedigger manages to escape, but is forced to leave behind his loot, Niu Mingjue's torso. In the book, Wei Ying and Lan Zhan never met Xiao Xingchen and Solang while they were alive, and they don't meet Xu Yang until Yi City. Hearing the rumors from the waiter in the tavern is the first time that Wei Ying learns about Xu Yang and the others. Lan Zhan provides the rest of the story, even though he also never met them because he himself was in seclusion. However, Xu Yang's first meeting with Xiao Xingchen and Solang is described in the book in a bonus chapter. He's walking around with Ming Yao at the time, who de-escalates the situation between them. Anyways, before they bring Xu Yang to Niu Mingjue in the drama, they say goodbye to Xiao Xingchen and Song Lang. At Qinghe, Niu Mingjue has his epic entrance. He wants to execute Xu Yang on the spot, but the others stop him because there are still too many open questions. As I said before, in the book, Xu Yang was never delivered to Niu Mingjue. Instead, it's Xiao Xingchen who caught him after the Chang massacre and brought him to the Jin clan for punishment. Niu Mingjue still insists that Xu Yang should be killed, but Jin Chang clan refuses. Instead, he just imprisons him. All of this happens in the book after the Sunshot campaign and after Wu Ying's death. In the drama, it all happens before. Ming Yao, who's working as Nie Mingju's vice general in the drama, brings Xu Yang to the dungeon. On the way, he's disrespected by the Nie chief general. Meanwhile, the boys discuss the Yin Iron Shards and the Wen clan with Nie Mingju, and Xu Chonghai is mentioned once again. Later that night, Wu Ying runs into Ming Yao before he jumps onto a roof and dozes off. With his mission over, I guess, now that Xiang is imprisoned and all, Nawanji returns to the cloud recesses. He still says bye to Wu Ying, knowing full well that he can't hear him. The next morning, Zhang Cheng once again searches for Wu Ying, who spent the entire night on a roof. Shortly after, the Nie clan is attacked by the Wen clan because Nie Mingju refuses to hand over Xu Yang. None of this happens in the book. The Wen clan never attacked the Nie clan like that. But there is a deep-seated beef between the Nies and the Wens, because when Rohan was jealous of Nie Mingju's dad, which resulted in Nie Mingju's dad's death. In the drama, Nie Mingju catches Ming Yao red-handed as he kills the chief general. Nie Mingju is super upset, but before he can punish Ming Yao in any way, Ming Yao shields him from Wen Juliu's attack. The Wen clan manages to overpower and defeat the Nie clan. Once the fight's over, Nie Mingju kicks Ming Yao out of the Nie clan. In the book, Ming Yao was never kicked out of the Nie clan. Instead, Nie Mingju saw his potential and wrote him a letter of recommendation so he can officially join the Jin clan. However, Ming Yao doesn't receive the position he hoped for and is still not recognized by his dad. Instead, he works under a condescending Jin officer whom he kills during the Sunshot campaign. And this is what Nie Mingju witnesses instead of Ming Yao killing the Nie chief general. Ming Yao also doesn't protect Nie Mingju in the book, but actually petrifies him before running away. This is the perfect point to end the first video, or should I say episode, of this series. I decided it makes sense to split the drama into chunks of 10 episodes, so in the end we'll have 5 videos, I hope. Depends a bit on how much I have to say later on. If you watched it to the end, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. Are there any differences I missed so far? I certainly hope not, because I put a lot of work into this, but I'm only human after all. So if I did, let me know in the comments below. If listening to random people talking about random stuff on the internet appeals to you, leave a like and subscribe. And if you have any topics you'd like to hear me ramble about, leave your suggestion in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching and stay tuned for the next one. Bye!